Welcome everybody to the real heroes, and these are the mothers. These are the mother warriors. Thank you. We might need tissues. You might need tissues. So there's tissues here. There's tissues at the bar, I'm sure. We were talking just before how this is a very emotional thing for them and for all of us. Just before we start, before I introduce all these amazing mothers on the panel, I just want to take a minute and do a shout out, first of all, to the Cannabis team that have done an incredible job of putting on this incredible event, and have really just gone all out to showcase the innovation in the industry and the technology. And I want to just take a moment here and turn all that down just for a moment and encourage you all to really lean in and listen to what we're about to get into here, because in my opinion, this is what it's all about. This is the why, this is the heart of why these products are so important, why the innovation is so important, why the science is so important. It's because of these stories and these journeys of these mothers and their children. And I know other mothers in the audience too who have been on this journey. This is what it's about. So I really encourage you to lean in and really listen with your hearts to what we're going to share today. So let me introduce who these fabulous people are. So sitting right beside me is Miko Hester Perez. Just listen to these stories. I mean, anyone who's a mom here knows being a mom in and of itself is like a huge thing. Just getting dinner on the table is like quite a feat. So these are women who are mothers, who have children with special needs, and then have done all that I'm about to share with you. So Miko Hester Perez, in 2009, Miko decided to go public with her son's success with medical cannabis. And since that day, in 2009, she has become a source of inspiration and information for families looking to explore unconventional and holistic treatment options within the autism spectrum. The combination of 20 years of legal experience and over 15 years of special education knowledge make Miko a modern-day warrior mom within the industry. As co-founder of UF4A.org, she consults with families, autism organizations, universities, and healthcare professionals. Her expertise in cannabis consulting with special needs families has made her an ideal board member on the Normals Women's Alliance, which is one of the most progressive and respected marijuana organizations internationally. In 2016, I thought this was really interesting, Miko developed the Joey Network, introducing the first cannabis and autism-centered app made available for patients throughout the world. Miko pledges to leave no family behind, and every single day, her mission is to help families improve the quality of life for their loved ones through unconventional treatments. So that is mom number one. That's Miko. Skipping over to Abigail Dar. Abigail Dar, who is a local resident here in Israel, is an Israeli activist who works tirelessly to promote rights for children and adults diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Via Alut, the Society for Autistic Children in Israel, and Kvutzat HaShavim, an NPO that develops inclusive solutions for severely autistic, and is the parental force behind a multinational movement to add autism as a qualifying condition to Israel's medical marijuana program. That's really huge. We've got so many parents. I've talked to so many parents who are saying, let me know what happens, how's it going, how the research. There are so many people who are waiting with bated breath for that study. Mother to a young adult with severe autism, Abigail is involved in promoting clinical research, tracking children and adults who receive whole plant extract cannabis oil treatments under a preclinical study that could pave the way for autism patients around the world. Amen. That's our prayer. And just a little note, I know Abigail for many, many years and worked with her son Yuval, who's now 23, when he was about 9 years old. Right? And I remember him with his straws, all his hundreds of straws, flicking and flicking his, he still has his straws, okay. Still got his straws. And now for Janie Maidler. Janie Maidler and her family's lives were forever changed in 2013 when a bone tumor was discovered aggressively dissolving the left side of her daughter Riley's face and palate. After hearing this devastating news, Janie dove into research. She could not deny giving Riley the best outcome if it were a possibility. This meant illegally giving Riley cannabis oils. After seeing remarkable results, Janie decided it was time to take a risk and to go public. She single-handedly fought for Delaware to have a pediatric medical marijuana law, which is now called Riley's Law. She then went a step further and fought for Delaware's pediatric medical card holders to be allowed their cannabis oils on school property. Both of these laws, Riley's Law and SB 181, passed with unanimous votes through all health committees, the Senate and the House, which was an unprecedented event. So that's pretty amazing, and it is really an honor to have you here on this panel today. So we have about 3 questions that I wanted to talk about and give you each an opportunity to share. Is this the mic for them? Okay, so you guys want to grab the mic there? Okay. Is it on? Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. And the first thing that I think we all love to really hear from you is the story. How medical cannabis came into your lives, how it came into the life of your child, and especially how it made an impact in their health and healing where other medical treatments really failed. So you could just each take a turn sharing.
In 2009, my son was given 6 months to live. And I remember driving home from the doctor's office, and I'm saying to myself, you know, my son is not going to die on my watch. And as a legal researcher, I went home and I went to work. I actually did some research. I went to the library at the time. We were still using the library. And I knew that I needed to plead my case, ultimately to the Supreme Court, which is his physicians. And so his physicians agreed with me that this was an option for me. And, you know, it was amazing, the results that came from not only me learning and being able to speak with doctors such as Lester Greenspoon, to be able to speak to the people where I'm getting the research from, and they're helping me to save my son's life. And within 3 months of placing him on cannabis treatment, my son went from 42 pounds to gaining about 30 more pounds, and actually interacting with his siblings, interacting with our dog, being able to pay attention to the TV, being able to... I found cannabis helped our family find Joey's personality, actually helped him find life and quality of life for our family as well. And so, you know, to go back to 2009, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I needed to do whatever it took for my son to be alive. And I'm so glad that I did.
So before you pass the microphone on, you guys are welcome to clap for her. Can you maybe just ask the people in the back, Sarah, maybe just keep it down a little bit so we can hear them more easily? So I think what's really unique about your story is that both medically and developmentally made such an impact for your son. Could you share a little bit about, were there other things that you tried first, pharmaceuticals, conventional treatments? I think what we really want to hit home today is how everything else failed. I'm sure all of you have been through journeys of trying everything else first because you basically are forced to before this is even an option, and then how medical cannabis really changed that for you.
Well, at the time, not only was Joey 42 pounds, he was actually on about 14 different medications. And these medications were used to treat the symptoms, autism symptoms. And every medication that was given to us, the side effects was death and liver damage. So I really, you know, they advise us behavioral care. They advise us with using certain holistic type treatments, and nothing worked. And after the 14th medication, I knew that cannabis was going to be, you know, it was worth a try. It was definitely worth a try. And with the support team of his medical support team, we were able to do it all together as a team.
Sharing, and I think part of the hope, passed on to Abigail, is that this doesn't have, that cannabis can be an option that you don't have to get to after you've tried 14 other pharmaceuticals that have side effects like liver damage and death. And this can be an option that you can really help your child with from the beginning, because that's the only one that really made the impact of where Joey is today. So thank you for sharing your story. So same question to you, Abigail, a little bit about how it came into your life.
I'll start with the second one because when we talk about medications, and my son received a lot of medication too, we have to understand that autism is unmet medical need, which means there's no one pharmaceutical or drug that cures, heals, or treats the symptoms of autism. So our kids, when it comes to behavioral issues, which are the symptoms that we deal with, get all kinds of antipsychotic medications, psychiatric medications that comes with many, many side effects. And when we are talking about the lower edge of the autistic spectrum, we're talking about, like my son, nonverbal kids, I think Joey is nonverbal too, which they can't even describe to us what these medications are doing to them. Also cannabis, by the way. We have to watch, observe, and guess what it does to our kids. So the whole thing with, I know that cannabis is still, because there's so little we know about, considered to be the last phase in medical. I think with autism it should be a little bit different because we don't have drugs for autism. But I'll start from the beginning. How did I get to know? And the truth is I heard about cannabis from my 82-year-old mother-in-law who's very tolerant to her son's smoking pot here and there. This is the truth. She's very persistent and she kept saying, you must try it. Not joking.
Can you just describe why she was encouraging it? What was happening with Yuval at the time?
Well, she knew what we're going through. Yuval is severely autistic. You mentioned you know him from 9 years old. I don't think there's any therapy, anything we tried to help him overcome his difficulties. He's still non-verbal and he has behavioral issues. But by the age he got, when he was 16, about 16, he developed also epilepsy. Seizures, and along with the seizures came behaviors that was impossible to handle. Self-injurious, very severe self-injurious behavior. He would bite his wrist again and again and have big scars over it, and outbursts. And since he's a smart kid, he wouldn't take aggressive outbursts on his dad or his brothers. It was me or the caregiver. And I don't know if anybody who doesn't experience living with this at home, even if the outburst is once in 2 weeks, you're still terrified. You still don't know when this outburst is going to come. So eventually what we did is going to the psychiatrist, trying this medication and that medication, putting this medication up and this medication. And you've all just got crazier and crazier. This is the truth. And without anything to do with cannabis, we just very slowly, under medical supervision, took him off all the antipsychotic medications. And it was, we were 24/7 at home with him, 3 adults to take him off the drugs. It was a very long process, but eventually when he got clean from the antipsychotics, he was better than he was with them. And I'm not saying anything general about antipsychotics at the moment, I'm talking about my son. For 2 years, he got only anti-epileptic drugs, which he still gets. Now we don't play with the seizures. But then we got access to cannabis about 18 months ago.
Don't pass it on just yet. Thank you. It's a beautiful story. And I spoke to Abigail, it was a couple weeks ago that we met for coffee, and she was sharing this story with me. And I just want you to highlight a little bit more. So he was having, I think several times a week, these aggressive outbursts where he was being self-injurious, biting you, and how impactful the cannabis was for him. But then you spoke a little bit about, I'd love for you to share that right now, the impact that made on the whole family, right? What it's like to live with a child who could at any moment have an outburst. You don't know if you're going to be safe. You don't know if anyone in the family is going to be safe, and how that's changed for you and how that impacted the whole family. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think the main thing is because you feel you can't be with him and take care of him, you always need big men around. Our caregiver is a woman. She's been with us for many years, but she can't handle it. Yuval has twin brothers. Now they're in the army, but back then they were in high school. and you feel like you have to make your bodyguards. I have this horrible remember of going with Valiva likes McDonald's. So once a week he gets McDonald's, and it was a very difficult time with him. And we went to the McDonald's, but I couldn't take him by myself, so I took Anoi with me. And he was outbreasting there. So leave aside the people's look and how you feel when your kid goes like this. I just have this picture of Amir and Marie, which are taller than Yuval and bigger physically from him, holding his hands in the back like a prisoner, taking him back to the car. And using your other kids as bodyguards. It's not what I wish for my sons. It's something we don't have today. For years I had to drive a 7-seat car because Yuval has to be back in the seat, so in case he gets outburst, I'll have enough time. So this is just a little bit. Now, it wasn't happening that often. It can happen every 2 or 3 weeks, but you never know when.
Now it doesn't happen.
I make you cry.
Yes. The tissues are really for me, and then I'm really for them. And now that doesn't happen anymore for him.
It happened, one outburst, we had a very severe one about a month ago. I thought he was adjusting, because with cannabis there's a lot of trial and error and different strains, and you have to work it out very carefully. And we got to a point where I felt I need to change. And Sharon, who's sitting here, told me go up. And I said, no, I'm going to go down and then change, because I don't want him to be too much overdosed. And he attacked me. So I can understand why, but if once in 18 months there's outburst, I'm okay with it.
Janie, we're going to go to you in just a minute to share your story. But I just want to highlight something you said, Abigail, the importance of, the moms, and I'm sure you all know this, who are using cannabis to help their children, are figuring it out as you go. A little bit of this, a little bit less of that, trying to add here, trying to add there, because there's such a lack of knowledge and direction. It speaks to the need to do the kind of research that you're all collaborating to really gather together. Okay, Janie, it's your turn to share your story, how medical cannabis came to be a part of your life and Riley's life.
Well, I think that her doctors were trying to figure out what was going on just as much as I did, because they had no clue what type of tumor this was. They had never seen it walk through their research hospital doors before, they said. It took about 46 biopsies to figure out what kind of tumor it was. We had no choice but to remove it, or else it was going to consume her entire skeletal system of her head. So we couldn't back out of this surgery. The only other option would have been chemo, which at the time they were just testing a certain type of chemo at Harvard, and there was no proof that it would work. So it took them about 2 weeks to figure out how to go about this surgery, and they wouldn't tell us exactly how it was going to happen. My husband and I assumed that they were going to put bone in place of the bone they were going to take away. I did a ton of research, of course, and I kept coming up with, that cannabis would help this tumor from coming back. It has 60% reoccurrence rate. I knew that cannabis would help with nerve damage. I knew there had to be nerve damage that was going to happen. I knew that if they were going to put bone replacement back in, it might help bone stimulation. The day before surgery, they give us a description of her surgery. It was going to be an all-day situation that she was going to be under. They were going to, the tumor had already consumed most of the left side of her face. They were going to remove all of this bone. The sinus orbit was already missing. Most of the left maxilla was missing. The cheek, bottoms of the eye orbit had already been started eating away. And everything had to be removed, the tumor, the margins that it had even touched. She was going to lose all of her teeth. Her palate was already missing. And so she was pretty much going to come out of surgery like a potato sack. And they just kept saying to us, we can't put anything in its place because it may make this tumor come back even worse. And it was a very world-renowned plastic surgeon, and he just kept saying, don't worry, plastic surgery is amazing, it's advancing, it's you know, we can make her try to look as normal as possible. We're going to do dental implants. We just can't save her teeth, and the point is we're going to save her life. So I had already had cannabis in the back of my head, but as soon as they said this, it was a tipping point. I had to deal with brother and sister that were police officers, father who's a minister. It was rough. It was very rough. So, but you know what? I didn't care. You know, that was my little kid. So, you know, she came out of surgery. They had, for some reason, stitched her teeth into the skin. No bone underneath. Every time she tried to drink water, her teeth like flipped brown in her mouth. She was on a liquid diet for an unknown amount of time. I wanted to wait to start her on cannabis because I didn't want to get caught. We were in an illegal state, and I knew that they were going to do a follow-up MRI to make sure that they got all the tumor. They didn't. There was some of it that they couldn't reach, you know, way back in the sphenoid sinus. And so they did an MRI 1 month exactly from the date of surgery. She started cannabis 1 month and a day from surgery. And every single follow-up MRI, that little bit of tumor shrank by about 25%. And not only that, around her teeth started forming a crust of bone. And that crust of bone just started spreading, and it kept getting thicker. And you do expect, you know, bone to regenerate, bone to reform. But it was not only reforming and regenerating, it was doing it at a remarkable rate. And her doctors just kept saying, "What are you doing? What are you giving her?" And I just kept saying, "I'm giving her frankincense."
It's all essential oils.
We actually ended up at Johns Hopkins, a different hospital, consulting with another plastic surgeon because some of the tumor cells had gotten into her jaw joint. And he was looking at her medical records, and he just kept looking at her, looking at the medical records, and he said, "This is not the same child. This child did not have this surgery. I cannot tell that she's had this surgery." And he said, you know, underneath all that baby fat, and this was probably, you know, 8 or 9 months after surgery. And he said, underneath all that baby fat, yes, she looks a little messed up, but everything that she needs is there to protect her. The bone is there. It's not perfect, but it's there. And I cannot tell that this child has had that happen to her. Her dentist, who, you know, the dentist and I were close, but, you know, he's very emotional about it. He was against, actually, cannabis. Her teeth roots started regenerating. When he saw that happen, he handed me $150 and told me to go buy her some more. So she's just been great ever since. She did develop seizures 2 weeks after surgery. You know, maybe something happened while she was under, but you know, the cannabis has been very good at helping to control the seizures also.
Wow. Gosh, okay. So take that story. And what's amazing is that it shrunk the tumor, it caused growth for her bones and her teeth, and is it helping her with her seizures as well?
Yes, and her tumor's now stable for 2 years.
So this is why you're the heroes, because you are absolute trailblazers doing things illegally, you know, paranoid about your police sister-in-law or father-in-law minister. And this is the kind of pressure on top of everything else that you have to work under. So I want to go to the next question now. We'll answer this more concisely. If you think about your journey trying to make cannabis an accessible treatment for your child, what would you say was the biggest challenge that you came across? You can start. We'll go the other way now. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you came across? And what quality action do you feel helped you most overcome or push through that challenge?
Probably the biggest challenge was definitely my brother and sister. They're from the South. having that legal aspect. The community, my friends were very supportive. I had an action plan that if I get arrested, will you please give her this medication? So the community was very supportive. When I wanted to go and try to make it legal, I actually went after the one senator that had spoken out against medical marijuana. He had voted no on the adult law, and he had campaigned against it. And I figured if I can take out the biggest bully, I can get them all.
Yeah.
And it worked. And so, yeah, I had him come talk to Riley, and I invited him over to the house, showed him all the medical records, and I had him talk to her, and she just explained to him how, that she was a straight A student when she's on this cannabis, and when she is not on it, she can't eat because it hurt, and the inflammation was so bad, and that all she wanted was just to be a normal little kid. And it got him like that, and he's been our champion ever since.
And it's an amazing component, because I know there's many families I know that would love to use it as an option, and the fear of your children being taken away is a very real fear. And that's what you were contending with. So, thank you. Abigail, you want to answer that same question?
The biggest challenge in?
Armani, here's the question. What was the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges that you came across when trying to make cannabis a viable option for Yuval? And what do you think was the biggest thing you did for your quality that helped you overcome or push through that challenge?
To get the cannabis for Yuval, it was 18 months ago. Yuval's neurologist is Professor Uri Kramer, who does all the retrospective study about kids with seizures and cannabis. And he's a friend of mine, and he's a lovely man, but you feel free to talk to me however he likes. And I called him and I said, Uri, I want cannabis for Yuval. And Yuval doesn't comply to the qualifying condition for epilepsy because he's balanced with seizures with drugs. So he said, get out of here, I'm not giving you cannabis. I said, okay, but you find me another doctor who will. And he said, okay, and he thought I'll forget.
He doesn't know Abigail.
I didn't. And we live in the same neighborhood, and it was August, I don't know, 40 degrees in the shade, and his wife sent him to the supermarket Friday. I got him, put her under the tree. I said, Uri, you find me a doctor now. So he started making calls, but it wasn't easy to find a doctor that will. It's not only, we have the Ministry of Health and the qualifying condition. Yuval got his license under compassionate treatment. We don't have yet autism as qualifying condition, even though there are very positive attitude to it. I understand the obstacles. I know we're going to have it soon. But we didn't have it then, and eventually find me a doctor he treats a lot of people with post-trauma. With cannabis, he believes a great deal in it, and he found for Yuval, and we got the access for it. But this doctor was a lovely man, honest enough to tell me, look, I understand cannabis and post-trauma. I don't understand autism. So after you get the access, I don't know what you should be given to him. I mean, what strain, what dosage. We had to go through a lot of trial and error until we find what works for Yuval. So I think the biggest obstacle for Yuval was just getting the access, finding a doctor who's willing to deal with treating cannabis for autism.
And all the trailblazing work that you're doing, hopefully, is what's going to make that much easier for mothers, for parents.
Since then we have quite, I think, few, even over 100 kids and adults with severe autism here in Israel who had access to medical cannabis, even though we don't have qualifying condition. I think I'm lucky in this sense to live in this country because they're very compassionate people. And I understand the risks in cannabis. I understand there's not enough knowledge about long-time use, and the medical community worries. I was just telling here to Mikidor, I think he was there a second ago, that a few years before we got cannabis, I went to Yuval neurologist. Uri was on sabbatical. I went to someone else and I asked her, what do you say about cannabis? And she said, she said, well, there are, and I came there with Yuval, severely autistic, nonverbal, self-injurious, okay? And I said, what do you say about cannabis? And she said, I don't know, there are research showing it affects the intelligence. So I looked at her and I said, Doctor, PhD at Harvard? Next reincarnation. Now talk to me. So eventually...
Thank you. Yes, and a big part of what we're doing is educating medical professionals to understand the power that it can help your child. So what would you say, Miko, would be the biggest challenge you came across and how you overcame it?
Well, my biggest challenge was my family. I also have 2 narcotics detectives. As uncles, my brother's a fireman, and we come from a very conservative Christian family. And so being able to be open to my family was one of my biggest challenges. And then I had one more challenge, and that was walking off the set of Good Morning America and being able to help the millions of families who saw me on that day in 2009. And so, on that day I made an oath that every family that contacted me, that I would help them. And I've continued to maintain that oath, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is because I feel for every family that contacts me, I go back to that place where I was in 2009, watching me watch my son almost pass away. And so I know it's something, with special needs families, we have this certain bond, and if you call, we'll pick up. So, my biggest challenge is sleep. I don't sleep anymore. But it's definitely, my son has given me a purpose, and it has given me some of the best friends, best friends and best moms that I could have ever met. I'm here because of Abigail. I'm in California, she's in Israel. And no matter where we are, we connect. Wherever, we just have this bond. This is us. And so the one thing that I can tell you is cannabis has not only brought my son life, but it's brought me life that I didn't have before.
Talk about this for like hours and hours and days, levels of the impact in your life of your family, life of the purpose in your life. I'm just curious, we're not going to talk about this at length, but has your family turned around a little bit since they've seen its impact with Joey?
There was one year I told my father that I placed Joey on cannabis, and he did not speak with me for about 6 months. And he came over for Christmas, and he walked into Joey's room, and for the very first time, his grandson had made eye contact with him. My dad left with tears in his eyes. He didn't say goodbye to me, he just left. He called me back a couple of days later and apologized to me. And he's been my biggest supporter. When I called him and told him I was coming here, I made him so proud to be here.
Did you ever talk to your 82-year-old grandmother? Is that the one who's pushing you? Big polar opposite experiences. She's like pushing it.
She wouldn't speak to me for 6 months for other reasons.
Moral of the story, you can't please everybody, so do what you gotta do. Take care of your kids. Okay, so our final wrap-up question. I don't know about you, I'm sure many of you who are listening today, but I for sure feel this like swelling desire to do whatever we can to help this path be easier for you, to help hundreds and thousands of families and their children have medical cannabis be a more viable, accessible option, not having to go through 14 other pharmaceuticals first. So in your experience, what would you say is the single thing, the single action that we can take to help move this movement forward? Whoever wants to take it first.
Well, here's what I would say. When I came out in the public, came forward, I thought that other families were gonna come to my side and come forward with their little posters with their little handicapped kids and, stand with me. Nobody did. They were all scared. They kind of stayed in the dark. After the law was passed, they all came out. So I stood there by myself wasn't exactly by myself. I had my little, at the time, she was 9 and turning 10 with me. So my little girl and I did this by ourselves. No help, no support. We stood in front of hundreds of legislators, shaking in our boots, and we were able to get 2 laws passed unanimously. So even if you feel like you're the only one fighting, do it. If there's something that you need to change that just seems like a mountain, don't worry about it. Try it, do it. You would be shocked, because I knew that once I took that step, there was no turning back, and I can't believe what we were able to accomplish. So it just shows that a little voice can become a big voice.
So just do it.
Well, my experience is totally different. I feel I have a lot of support. I think Israel is fairly liberal when it comes to medical cannabis. We have vast cannabis medical plan. We have people who are very much for it. We already have qualifying condition for children with seizures, so it's easier maybe. I think the breakthrough was due to Sharon, who sits here, who's my partner. She's just old news because she's 3 years in the business. But I feel there's a lot of support, but I understand the need of the medical community to have papers, to have scientific research, to have clinical data. I don't think they don't want to give us the access. I think they're afraid because about what we don't know. So the 3 of us was trying to fundraise, wasn't very successful. We didn't have enough funding for proper study, so I decided I'm going to do it by myself. So me and Sharon, what we do, we have today I think over 60 kids, because parents, even though they get access through all kinds of doctors, eventually they approach me because I'm the voice. And we built questionnaires with parameters about behaviors and different strains. And we do it in collaboration with Professor Debbie Mayer's lab. So we really hope that soon we won't be just mums screaming cannabis helps, but we also have a proper scientific paper showing it does, because what we experience each day, and Sharon, who guides the parents, really gets a lot of phone calls every day, some of them very distressing, but some of them just saying, look, the kid was like this, he suddenly talked to me, he suddenly was quiet, he was sitting, we experience it on a daily basis.
Is Professor Mary here?
Somewhere.
Are you here?
I'm not here,
No.
maybe downstairs. Yeah.
And as far as I understand, all 3 of you are collaborating on this particular project. This is an amazing coming together. So you can answer the same question. What do you think? What do you recommend? Anyone who wants to help move this movement forward, what is a single thing that they can really do to help that?
Join us.
Okay, all right.
I decided that I was going to stay in this industry for every family that contacted me, because we all need to know how to navigate, where to go, who to go to. And I feel like since I kind of kicked the door open in the States, I need to remain that point person for them. So I sit on multiple boards. I sit on the Normal Women's Alliance. I'm a scientific advisor for Cannabis Science. I'm an educational director for a collective in California. I did this so more families could not only have the legal protection, but to be able to have direction. Something that I didn't have in 2009, and was in the legal industry. I'm not a consumer. I was doing what was in the best interest of my son. And, you know, in California, it's a little bit interesting, the cannabis industry. And so I was afraid to walk into a collective. I was afraid to walk into a grow room. All of these things that special needs parents, this was very foreign. And so I have made it kind of my job to be able to direct every single family to whatever resource that they need all across the country.
Incredible. I think one of the main reasons why you're here is to share your story, to share the impact that cannabis is really powerful. This is not just a game. This is not just all the hype and the new product. This is really impactful for your children's lives and their development. And I just want you as mothers to really feel all of us and everyone who's listening really supporting you and honoring you in this journey that you've created. It is really, for yourselves, what's incredible to me is that you've done all this for your kids, but then you didn't stop there. You went to advocate and push laws through and legislature and answering every phone that rings. So I would love if we could all just stand and cheer and support and